You are listening to the Run the Rack Outdoors podcast, where we take an all-in, leave no doubt approach to all things adventure hunting. From the big woods to the high country.
How about that?
Let's learn together as we discuss with our expert guests on what it takes to be successful in the backcountry. I'm your host, Weston Homa. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Run the Rack Outdoors podcast. Today I have on Weston Paul from MTNTOUGH Fitness. So if you've never heard of MTNTOUGH, it is a fitness program app that gets you ready for hunting season. It is chock full of different training programs that will build your strength and endurance and get you ready for the mountains. I think it's even a great tool to utilize even if you're a hunter from back east. I've downloaded the app. I'm actually utilizing it while I train for my 100-mile ultra. I'm going to utilize a couple strength workouts per week. That way I'm not losing anything there. And once I finish that race, I'm going to be ready to rock and roll for September. So that's what I'm doing. I really like it so far. They have, again, a ton of stuff on there. Whether you're at the gym, they have a bunch of training videos for that, or if you're just at home and you have like the bare minimum gear, they got training programs for that. Also videos daily for mobility, yoga, nutrition, all these things. I think it's pretty cool. So I just downloaded it, like I said, and I wanted to get Weston on. It's funny having the same name, but I've heard him on a couple different podcasts. I remember hearing him on Wired to Hunt with Mark Kenyon. I remember hearing him on Jeremy Miller podcast. He's a big endurance runner. And Weston has this background of ultra running, and then now he's tied in with MTNTOUGH, obviously is into Western hunting as well. So I thought it would be great to get him on, chop it up, talk about really what I see is a lot of similarities between ultra running and backcountry hunting. We dive into how to train and prepare for out west, also nutrition, mindset, and things like that. So I hope you guys like this one. I really enjoyed chopping it up with Weston. Other things going on. So yeah, like I said, I have my 100-mile ultra marathon coming up. So that's August 9th. Just starting like a big training week this week. And the next few weeks, I'm just going to be married to the trails training for that. So what I'm actually going to do is like a YouTube series training for a 100-miler. This is my first 100-mile race. So I'm so stoked. I'm going to have like weekly videos I'm going to post on YouTube as I approach this race, just getting ready. If you guys want to follow that, check that out. Go over to my YouTube channel, just my name, Weston Homa, and subscribe. I think that's going to be really fun to share all that. So also, I just dropped a video from my sub 250 goal marathon at Grandma's Marathon. That's on my YouTube as well. So check that out. That just dropped the other night here. And I really like to put a lot of effort into editing these videos and things like that. Like I'm just a big fan of like YouTube documentary style films, and kind of just walk through my journey a little bit of somebody who was not a runner only just a few years ago to now breaking 2 hours and 50 minutes in the marathon. And it's looking like I'll be going to Boston next year. So stay tuned for that. That's been the dream. And I'm just so stoked. So yeah, stay tuned. More content to come on my 100-miler because yeah, I'm doing that on August 9th. Going to let the body recover. And then I got a Colorado high country mule deer tag. That's going to be the first half of September. And then the second half of September is Idaho elk. So pretty much all my work PTO is going to go to the month of September. So I'm so stoked. Then obviously come back here and hunt my whitetails and then chase some bears as well. So that's what I got going on. Hope you guys enjoy this week's episode with Weston. Let's give it all we got this week. Let's leave no doubt. Let's run the rack, everybody. All right. Take care. See ya. Got to give you props. You got a good first name, dude.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
Always appreciate when we have that good first name in common. My last name always gets people confused. even people I've like worked with for a long time, if I email them, they'll respond Paul. So I get to give them grief for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I could see that. Paul Weston. That
You probably
sounds
don't have
like.
that problem.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I get that before, and I'm like, no, my first name's definitely not Homa.
Yeah,
That's not.
yeah,
That's definitely not right. But cool, man. Yeah. We just chatted a little bit, but I wanted to get you on the podcast because you're obviously with Mountain Tough. I got the app now. I started exploring it more. I think it's a great way for me to kind of supplement my strength while I'm in my big like endurance running is a little bit like how I like to leverage getting ready for these backcountry hunts. I know that's kind of right up your alley too with the running, but also dive into Mountain Tough and just some things like that. So if you want to give
cool.
like a little intro
Yeah,
about yourself and maybe Mountain Tough and things like that, feel free.
perfect, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work for Mountain Tough Fitness, and we're a fitness app. We help people get in shape. Primarily, we help hunters get ready for their trips, their trips out west. A lot of Midwest, East Coast guys and gals are like, they'll come out the first time, they'll come out west, they've dreamed about it, and it's oftentimes humbling, it's eye opening, all of those things, and we kind of step into their world at that point. They come out, they experience it, and maybe it didn't quite go the way they wanted, and they say, oh, fitness is something that I can work on. They kind of have that aha moment, and they'll pick up the app and they'll start training on it for the next year. Now, tags are harder and harder to draw, so that's one of those pieces where people, once they commit to training, then they're in it, and they trust us to help them with that training. That's what we do. I was like, we test workouts, we retest them, we then launch them in our app, we film them all, write the programming and launch them in our app so that people have all the right tools from the actual mountain professionals, and that's what Mountain Tough does. So um, we it's kind of a subtle, we get a lot of emails, not a lot now, I guess, but quite a few of people that, such as yourself, that are getting into ultra running. You can thank Cam Haynes for that. You can thank all those guys for going and running races, but that's a motivating thing for a person to step into that when they didn't think that they could do it, and now they can. And when a person hasn't trained for ultras ever before. Maybe they've trained for marathons, but they haven't trained for ultras. Once you get into it, it'll take you well over a year, 2 years, 3 years sometimes, to start understanding that you need strength as a supplement to your running program, because ultras require durability. And that is across the board. That's why you see older guys and gals succeed in ultras, because they've had the time and experience to understand that they need a strength component in their training regimen. And so that's where, like for you, saying, "Hey, I need something." Mountain Tough is able to fit that bill too. Well, we're not marketing to ultra runners. It's such a small niche.
And that's
Like,
not what I meant either. I just
yeah,
been looking
totally.
at Mountain Tough for forever, and I'm
Yeah,
like, I think this is a good chance
it's
here
like
because obviously getting ready for hunting is the number one main goal. Yeah,
big time, big
yeah.
time. Yeah, because I was like, even when back in the day when I, you know, got hooked on long distances, I'd step into the elk woods and I'd be in the best shape ever. I'm like, I run 100 miles, like whatever, no big deal. And I would then put my backpack on and go to climb a ridge, and I'd be sucking wind. And I'm like, why in the world is that? Well, it's just a different modality when it comes down to carrying weight over uneven terrain. And so it doesn't necessarily correlate to hunting, in the way in which you think it would. But the mental grit that you get from running long distances and being able to power through adverse conditions, that pays off in hunting situations big time. So yeah, I was like, we're just helping people get in shape, meeting them where they're at. We got programs for everybody. If you're off the couch, honestly, if you're just like in a spot where you're like, I want a life change, I want to change something about what I'm doing, I was like, we'll meet you where you're at. A lot of times some of our marketing and that sort of stuff comes across as pretty elite, but know that we've got you wherever you are in your fitness journey. So yeah, that's Mountain Tough in a nutshell. The app, you go get it like with the rest of the apps, but don't do Beachbody, and if you're a guy, don't ride a Peloton. So do Mountain Tough.
Yeah, way cooler, way tougher too. Yeah.
I joke. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
awesome, dude. Yeah, it's really cool when you download the app, you can see, I mean, there's a bunch of different programs, some just body weight, some, cater to beginners. There's a ton of stuff on there, even with the mindset stuff and even yoga and the mobility stuff, which
yeah,
I want to explore more too, especially for the things I'm doing. And they say that's just one of the great ways to improve longevity for
oh,
everything too. Like that should
dude,
be I need to like that should be like a habit like for me
yeah,
anymore. But
yeah.
yeah, there's a ton of
The
stuff
yoga,
on.
the yoga is bonkers when it comes to single leg stability, which I was like, you run like rocky, rooty trails, and you need that stability, that joint stability, ankle, knee, single leg stuff. I'm like, you cannot beat a good yoga program when it
No.
comes down to it. You'll fall over the first time you do it. You're like, why can't I balance? But that stuff pays off and running big time.
Yeah, and the flexibility, and as far as
Yeah,
like it's helped me with my gait. Even like so the few people I've like even connected with just through social media now with my platform reach out, and maybe they're like, I mean, it's obviously we're always talking about hunting, but they're like, I want to get in better shape. I'm training for my
yeah,
first 10K or my half, and like I'll help them like get an idea of a plan or whatever. And I'll always recommend like, dude, if you're just watching TV at night, like it's no big deal. Just get on the ground and hold some like static stretches.
yeah,
Like, it's just gonna help you so much with your gait and like recovery and just those little things like that. Yeah.
big time.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah. So a little bit about you though. So you're in Montana, right?
yeah, yep.
Okay. Yeah. Born and raised there?
No, I grew up in South Dakota, so I grew up right by Mount Rushmore, and then I I was just I grew up skiing, and I was going to Montana to ski, so came out for college and never left. And so I was like,
Gotcha.
skiing is something that I definitely love, and I was like, I've been here since. So yeah, kind of a ski bum, I suppose.
Okay, cool. And did you kind of grow up going over there to hunt elk and whatnot either, or did that come later?
No, I would go up to the Bighorns, to backpack, and we did a lot of climbing, that sort of stuff. And then I would come to Montana to ski. Would just do like, a ski trip here and there. And I was like, that's where I want to be. I was like, I loved the mountains around here, and I looked forward to being able to ski them. Being from South Dakota, we had a great ski hill growing up. I was like, I'll attribute all of everything in my base to, that ski hill that I grew up on. But yeah, when it came to Red Lodge and Bridger Bowl and Big Sky, and those places made a big impact on me. So no, I didn't. I hunted. Like when I was 12 years old, I shot a doe. Then I was like, nah, I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
And as it wasn't that impactful of a experience for me, so I just didn't do it. But I was like, I had plenty of other activities I grew up doing, and that my parents encouraged, and then yeah, once I graduated from college, and um my wife and I moved to Bozeman. My next door neighbor, I was like, he and my father-in law's from Michigan, and he's like, you got to hunt elk, like you live in Bozeman, Montana, you got to hunt elk. I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm like, I'm a mountaineer ski guy, and like that's what I do. I go up in these mountains, but um, it turns out all the mountaineering ski guys that are up here also would fill their freezer with elk, and that like hit home for me. I'm like, you know what? Actually, pretty cool. So I got into hunting then when I moved here. So that's probably like 2005, when I moved to Bozeman, and I was like, oh, if I would have hunted in college, I would have probably taken a different path. I don't know if I would have finished. So um so yeah, I was like, my next door neighbor, started going with him, and then it took off from there. I was like full force, like, let's go. Yeah, I've been filling my freezer ever since. I was like, it's just pretty cool. Well, when I was 12, I'm like, that experience and getting it processed and it tasting like the meat processing facility that I took it to. I'm like, it's gross. But I remember when I was really young, my dad would cut his deer up in the garage and I'd help him out. And so I'm like, that for me was enough of an impact way back then that I'm like, you know what, I'm going to hang it up in my garage and I'm going to cut it myself. And so I'm like, yeah, started doing that and learned quickly about, what heavy pack outs are and how much work it requires. And since about 2005, I guess. But yeah, I was like, I had like hunting influence. I killed all the rabbits I had in our neighborhood. I had a beagle, and I was like, my rule growing up is if you killed it, you eat it. And so my parents stood by that, and so I ate rabbits galore.
Nice.
My mom never hesitated. Every time I brought one home, skin it and she'd make whatever, and that was like so that's one of those pieces, I guess. So I had a hunting influence, but yeah, I didn't really. I mean, South Dakota, we'd have elk every once in a while. Now that elk population in South Dakota is pretty strong, actually. So
Yeah, I've seen that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
very cool.
So they've done a good job down there. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, everybody's done a good job. So, but yeah, I'm here, and I hunting is definitely a big part. I was like, still, people are getting into it now, and I'm like, there's always time. I was like, I'm one of those cases as well. But my father-in-law, he's like, you got to do it. And so we started rifle hunting, then quickly started bow hunting, and never looked back. I enjoyed it a lot. So yeah.
Nice. And then did kind of like the running journey kind of start when you moved out there too, or is that something you grew up doing a little bit more?
No, I'm like, I've actually had asthma growing up. And so I joke because I was like, there's the presidential physical fitness test. So I'm 42. So I was like, some people will remember this. Um, and that I could never get the blue badge where you would pass the mile run because I had asthma so bad. But when I got to college, it was probably like a combination of like pollen allergies from South Dakota, but I went to school in Billings, and so I started not having to use an inhaler, and we would dryland train for ski training. So that dryland training is essentially Mountain Tough on steroids.
Yeah.
If you can think of something that's like harder than Mountain Tough in some regards, I'm like, that was our dryland training, and so we ran a lot as part of that to prepare for our ski season, and so um, yeah, as a racer, I guess that would be the context around it, and so I'm like, I just started to be able to run. It was like one day, I'm like, no way, and I was just kind of weaned off the inhaler, and so it's probably because I finally grew as a freshman in college or grew out of it, and so I could run. But I mean, I would just do it as part of training for dryland. Never like got into trail races or anything. But my wife, after we moved to Bozeman, she had a group of girls that she would run with. They would do those like stage races. They would get a group of girls together and they'd run 200 miles, but it was all stage race type stuff. Ragnar.
I was
I
just
think
gonna say, was it one of those Ragnars? Yeah.
so. They would do that, and then some of her friends were like doing a training run for one of our local races, and they're like, "You should come do this with us." And for whatever reason, I was on a hunting trip with a buddy of mine, and we had got done with the hunting trip, and I mean, when I go to hunting, I'm like, I walk like a lot, and we got done with that, and he was kind of worn out, and he's like, "You should do the ridge run." I said, I'm like, what? And he's like, you do good at the ridge run. And he was just observing me as I was walking, as we were on this hunting trip. And I'm like, you know what? So anyway, I'd seen the community around my wife's like friend group. A couple of them said, you should go on this training run with me. And so I did a training run with them. I didn't know what I was signing up for. And I did 17 miles with these two of my wife's friends just off the couch. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Awesome.
shoot. I'm like, it turns out, and they're like, yeah, there's a race coming up. Like, there's still spots. You should sign up for that. So I ended up doing that race. It was like 20-ish miles, and I was hooked. And so I kind of saw it where from hunting, my encouragement from my buddy, and then I had a couple friends that they would go on these adventure runs every year, and it always kind of boggled my mind. But they would do these like fun runs into Yellowstone Park, and they'd talk about them. and one of them was a big time hunter, like really, really accomplished hunter. And he started trail running because he drew a mountain goat tag. And he was like, I have this mountain goat tag and I want to be able to find a good billy, but I don't have time to go like camp in these areas. So he started trail running as a way to look for billies. And that's how he got hooked. Anyway, so they were started running everything. This guy's crazy accomplished, ran hard rock like 5 times, and
Oh,
like just
wow.
really just good, just a
Yeah.
good all around dude, great husband, great father, and a great hunter too. And so I'm like, man. Anyway, I started doing the trail running thing, signed up for this race, signed up for that race. And those guys just kind of waited and watched me for a while before they actually gave me an invite to do one of their adventure runs. And that took me like a couple years to get an invite. And then when they invited me, I told them, I was like, to my wife, I'm like, they invited me on this run. I finally made it, because these guys are really good endurance athletes.
Yeah.
And so I got to go with them. And then that kind of set the tone for, yeah, my buddy then invited me to go pace him at Hard Rock. And then from Hard Rock, I was like, now I have to do a 100-miler. I'm like, I got to see Hard Rock firsthand. And I'm
That's
like,
really
I'm in.
cool.
So yeah, and so he's like, you're gonna sign up for one now. I was like, you better believe I am. So I signed up for one the next year, and I just kind of worked my way up incrementally. When you get into it, you get pretty obsessive. I say that about everything that I do. You can ask my wife. I'd be like, I kind of take it past the point of fun, oftentimes, and so
I relate
yeah,
to that. Yeah.
yeah. Running is like one of those things that now I've like weaned off it. I'm like, it's not as important to me as it was before. I still, if somebody says, hey, I want to go do this, I'm like, well, I'll go do it. I just like to stay in that sort of shape. But races, like I'm like, I'll be racing with my boys when I'm 60. I know it, and so I'm like, it's something that, you kind of ebb and flow, but you learn a lot through it. And so that was my path. And I was like, I still encourage people. I was like, oh, go do it. Like, go do it. You want a challenge in today's day and age. I was like, unless you're enlisted in the military, I'm like, you're probably not going to find that sort of challenge. You're not going to get that when you get into the professional world. That's for dang sure. People are looking for some sort of challenge mentally and physically, and those endurance sports really fit the bill when it comes down to it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I think I'm sure we could find maybe other examples, but no, the ultra running, I agree 100%. And I can't speak for women. Like maybe I'm not saying they are or not, but at
Yeah.
least for like men, just especially like my own experience, like I did felt like I did everything I was supposed to. Like went to
Yeah.
school, got a job, office job,
Yep.
and like I found backpack hunting, and the running kind of came with that. And then I
Yep.
grew up hunting and stuff, but then more towards this endurance like route, and then always just seeking a new challenge, and then just the daily like challenge of like got to get your run in today. And like some days I'm looking forward to it more than others, but it's just that constant like that challenge. I think men, like it's too kind of the 9 to 5, watch TV, eat dinner, go to bed. Like it's just too, it's not stimulating enough. And like I like how Joe Rogan says this. I've heard him say it on multiple like episodes I've listened to. He's like, we need like puzzles. Like we need to be challenged. Like we need to like overcome some things. And like I'm just a big mindset, personal development guy too, because it's like that's where you grow, and like that's what's so exciting about it. Even if like I know a certain point in these races, like everything hurts and it's so terrible, and like all these lows and stuff, but you get that perspective, and that's what's really like had me coming back for more, because I know there's so much growth in them and overcoming the challenges. And yeah, I think it's a great thing if you're looking if you feel like you just need something to like pursue and challenge yourself with. I couldn't agree more. I think ultra running's about like one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you'll learn a ton from it, from the experience, from the training regimen, the making it a practice, like actually forming a habit and holding yourself accountable, because you can't wing it. Like if there's very few people that can wing it. And so like all of that, yeah, that accountability piece. And then with the puzzle, it's its own puzzle, and figuring out all the different bits and pieces that help you have a successful race, from nutrition to gear to training program to rest and recovery and all of those things. You kind of get a fast track to that, I would say.
Yeah.
Uh, I was like, I never trained for a marathon, but I'd imagine training for a marathon's probably a lot similar. It's just like you got to go faster. So
Yeah. Yeah. So we're recording this, and I shared a little bit about it like on my profiles and stuff, but I'm just coming off I ran Grandma's Marathon in Minnesota this past weekend. So I just finished I've been training for that for months, but like this huge block. And yeah, it's a lot similar, but I am looking forward to getting on the trails because it's so much, that marathon training is so much more technical. And like you're really, there's more speed work, and I'm really obsessive on that pace on that watch. And like, gosh, I just remember thinking like, I can't wait till I get on trails, even if I'm running more miles in the week. Like I'm less concerned about that. I just want to go and eat
yeah,
the miles, but it's a lot of similarities. Yeah, it's both have their own nuances, but yeah, for sure.
big time.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I feel like I've learned just a ton, not about that, but then I think maybe it's like any craft. The further you go down it, the more disciplined you become with it. Like you learn a lot more about yourself and life
Yeah.
and things too. So would you say what is one of the bigger things you think running these ultras have taught you and you've learned from?
I'm like a big thing is you find that thing and you think that that's what you are. And so for frame of reference, people will be like, I'm a runner, I'm an ultra runner, I'm a trail runner. And then when you start identifying as that, then people will they'll start like recognizing you for it. They'll be like, oh, you do that? I could never do that. Like you'll hear it. And, that's kind of all wrapped up into identity. And what I've seen over time, because I've been right there, I'm like, I'm a runner. I'm doing this. I'm going to do this distance and then this distance and further and further. And now people are running 500 miles. There's no end. They're going to run 1,000 at some point,
They
or
had
at
that
least
Arizona
get to
300.
somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
crazy.
it's just like there's no end to it. But finding something and starting to you start identifying like that is who you are. Running for me, I was like, if you do it for long enough, you'll start understanding that that's not your identity. Running isn't your identity. And I'll say the same thing for hunting. Hunting is not your identity. Like it's something that you do, and it's something that you learn a whole bunch from. But you are an individual. You bring all your qualities to the table. You are who you are. It just happens to be like that's something I do. And so from a running perspective, the big thing about running is like if you get an injury and your identity is in being a hunter or being a runner and you have an injury and you can't do that race, like people will go into like some severe depression because their identity is tied up in doing that thing. And so I've run for long enough to understand that it is an important thing, but don't wrap your identity entirely around it. And the same goes for hunting. Same goes for pretty much everything. You could say that for your professional career, whatever. Like we're looking for you know this thing. Check this goal. Check this goal. I'm a hard charger. Whatever. Just know like yes, you can do hard things, and that's a quality that an individual has. And when it comes to ultra running and hunting, like I'm like I'll go back to that. Like you're one of the few if you can do a backcountry hunt, or you can go you can go harvest a white-tailed deer out of a tree stand. I'm like spent my time in tree stand. You want to talk about mental fortitude?
Yeah.
I'm like that people don't give it enough credit. When it comes down to it, they don't give it enough credit.
Yeah.
Especially Western hunters out here by me, I'm like, they get all judgmental on tree stand hunters, and I'm like, go do it, bud. Like, and then let's talk. Let's see if you have the fortitude to sit there. Um, so yeah, for me, running, I'm like, it's something that you'll learn a whole bunch from, but don't wrap yourself up too much in it, because when that injury comes, you can't do it anymore. If that was all of your identity, now that is suddenly gone, what do you have? And so I was like, that's
Mm-hmm.
where being able to practice, just being present and being there for your family and your friends and that sort of stuff, like, it's a big deal, because you'll see them support you in those races and you'll see the community and everything, but are you reciprocating that, I guess, is kind of one of the big things. So yeah, I'm like, that's a big one for me. I was like, if I really look back and get super introspective, I was like, in doing it, there's a lot of emphasis on trying to prove something, so you can
Yeah.
say I'm trying to prove it to myself, but ultimately I'm like, I've flipped that script and I'm like, I'd rather just work to improve. Like, I'm not working to prove anything to anybody or myself, but I was like, this is something that is helping me improve in certain ways. And I like that. I was like, when you step into the elk woods, or you come out west for a hunt and you're not successful, don't beat yourself up about it. Like, guess what? The locals aren't successful.
Yeah.
It's a hard game. And so, if you're if being successful makes you who you are, you got to take a bigger, deeper look at who you are. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I actually really like this answer. Like,
Yeah.
because it's like really making me think. And it's funny because, well, I wanted to say two things. The one thing, real quick, about the whitetail sitting in a stand. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's how I spend a lot of my fall after I'm coming out there, like in September, because I'm in Pennsylvania here. And I find that it is tough, especially because I'm somebody that likes to go, go, go. That's
Yep.
why I really fallen in love with hunting out west. But it's it's patience like anything
Yeah.
else. And I feel like patience being uncomfortable, whether it's uncomfortable in an ultra or on a
Mhm.
backpack hunt or just sitting in a tree
Yeah.
stand. Because sometimes I'm sitting there for all day sits during the rut. I'm like, I would kill to just go hike around for 10 miles looking for an elk, because at least I'm like
Yeah.
stimulated. Like, yeah.
Doing something new.
Um, so I think the patience thing is definitely what's helped me. And I've learned it from some of these big races.
Yeah.
Just being
Yep.
patient, comfortable, in the uncomfortable. But the second thing I want to say, because like it was a huge, and you said what you said, and I probably wouldn't have had much to relate to that prior to like this past winter. But I got through my hunting season in the fall and immediately started like running a bunch of miles, and this was like
Mhm.
in late October or like in November, kind of after I was done whitetail hunting. And I'm like, hunting's done, I'm going to start just training like crazy because I want to do all these races next year. And like I feel like finding like my niche here. And I was out on a trail run with a buddy, and we were just kind of in our local park, stepped on this, we were 2 miles in, I stepped on this rock and just snap, like my ankle
Yeah.
broke. It wasn't like some crazy huge compound fracture, but these hairline fractures. Turns out I had stress fractures in that ankle too.
Mhm.
But it posted me up for 9 weeks in a boot, and then I even when I after that had the boot off, tried to start running again, and then every week something else would flare up because my whole kinematic chain was jacked up. And then it took like another month or two of like I finally went to like PT, like I had to, and like do all that. But anyway, point is, during that time I couldn't run and I couldn't do like all these things that like I like to do and get ready, like train for these
Mhm.
hunts and stuff. And I really did like ask myself a lot of these questions. Like, I'm really bummed out, and I think it was okay to be upset. Like,
Yeah.
but I was like finding myself, call it journaling, calling it whatever you want. I just had to get my thoughts on paper. So I think, and I guess whatever, I'm getting a little bit vulnerable here, but I did start like journaling daily and start
Mhm.
writing things down about like what do I really value and like all these things. Because like am I really going to get into a huge depression just because I broke a bone and I can't do this one thing for
Yep.
a little bit of time. And it just made me, and it's not to say like I don't love these things, but it was like a little bit of a check. Maybe people can relate to this like in their own ways of like, okay, how are you really defining you? And I think it was such a healthy like mental check for me, because prior to that I was 100% like I'm a runner. I'm a mountain hunter.
Yep.
Like I am. Um, the other part of me is still like I do value these things and I love them and they give me a little bit of like a purpose and direction. It gets me exercising, gets me excited. And I think that's all healthy, but made me take a step back, think about relationships and community. And I had a list of things that make me happy, and I try to like empty my
Yeah.
mind. And like I made this like list of like small things or big things, and like I don't know, it just made me more present of all that. And it wasn't I didn't write down winning a race.
Totally.
I didn't write like that's the point I'm trying to make, and I didn't write down like punching a tag. Like those things are so awesome, but like it was like simpler things that
Yeah.
like make me define like what's a good day. So I'm like, okay, after I get through this whole thing, like let me try to focus on those things a little bit more.
Yeah.
Obviously I still want to run 100 miles and stuff, but
Absolutely.
like I
Yeah.
think you get my point. So I think that was, yeah, I'm happy you kind of said that answer because I think
I, lo-
that's a
I appreciate that
good,
too.
yeah,
I was like, just yeah. I was like, for me, those miles that like just training run after training run after training run. It's interesting because I had like started running with music because music motivates you, and then I moved to podcasts. Oh, you gotta listen to this podcast, gotta listen to that podcast. Just like I'm out there for forever, so I might as well download them and listen to them. Then I moved to books and listen to books. And honestly, like the further you run, the less you need that stuff. And then the more present you are in that moment.
yeah,
People call it mindfulness or whatever, but it's like clear train of thought. Finally, running when you go for that far of a distance, like I would get to that point where I'm like, wow, I can really think about these things. And that's your point of the importance of journaling. I could have sat down and journaled, but I was like, my method to finding that is, all these miles and kind of come back full circle to be like, no, it's pretty simple when it comes down to it. Like, these are the things.
yeah,
Patience is an important piece of who I am. I want that as part of my identity. Like
yeah,
that's pretty freaking cool when it comes down to it. Yeah.
yeah. I think another thing I forgot to mention was, I feel good when I help somebody
Yeah.
too. Like that was something I wrote down. Like that makes me
Yep.
feel good at the end of the day, whether I can like share what I know or what's worked for me, like with
Yep.
like something in fitness or hunting or just stupid. Like I just went and helped my brother fix something at his house or something. Like you know what I mean? It's like it's like yeah, you come back full circle to some of these little things, and no, that's really cool.
I had a guy. We have our race, the Bridger Ridge Run. It's like one of our local. It's been going on for forever, and it's just it's a vicious. It just, I don't know. It's a short race, but it is like it's gnarly, I guess is the way I should put it. And I was, I don't even remember how many years ago this was. It was a while, and I was really trained up, and I'm like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna finish like good, for
Hmm.
me. I'm gonna finish. And I had a guy fall right in front of me, literally fall in front of me, and he broke his ankle really bad. And he was the guy in front of me, and I watched him take the tumble, and I had a moment where I was like, God, I'm so trained up for this. Like, I could probably be like, are you okay? And just keep going. But I was like, no, I'm the person. So I stopped, and he's in excruciating pain. And I'm like, all right, I'm here. I'm helping you now. And um, I was like, I just sat down with him, got him some food, gave him some ibuprofen. And then I'm like, shoot, like, what are we gonna do? This guy's ankle's like obliterated. Well, everybody's passing me, passing me,
Yeah,
and everybody in the trail running community is like, you guys need help? You guys need help? And I'm like, nope, I got him. Like, sweep crew will be coming eventually. Because we were right up there, and then another buddy got to me, and he's a firefighter. So he kind of took over, and we actually were able to splint this guy's ankle with a couple pieces of wood and some duct tape. And and then everybody's passing us, every single racer, like down to the very end. And so we got the guy up, and he's kind of incoherent, didn't really remember where he was because of the shock of breaking his ankle. And so we started shouldering him. We'd get him a little further and a little further, and we're way up. like right at tree line. So we've got a ways to go before anybody can actually even rescue him off of this mountain. And it's the sweep crew, the crew that comes and makes sure everybody's clear off of the trail at the end of the race, caught up to us. And so, this is hours that everybody's gone, and me and my buddy Dylan are the very last guys in this race, with then the individual who broke his ankle. And the sweep crew gets to us. They radio in for search and rescue, and then they end up getting a helicopter to come in and land and then pick him up. And so I look at my buddy Dylan and I was like, man, how bad do you want to finish this race? I was like, we've already been up here for a couple hours. Everybody's gone. We're dead last.
Yeah.
And sweep crew's like, if you guys want to, I'm like, we'll be coming eventually. And so we finished that race, dead last, Dylan and I, and that was more powerful than finishing the race and podium, getting on the podium anyway.
Yeah.
But that was like one of those moments where I was like, well, my competitive side really wants to go,
Yeah.
but the side of helping somebody out, took over, and it made it more of a memorable experience for both Dylan and myself. We still reminisce, and every time I'm up there, it's like, oh yeah, this is that spot where James fell. And anyway, we finished, and he made it all the way back. Actually, he got a helicopter ride, went to the ER, came all the way back in a boot, and was at the finish to meet us. So, and say thank you. Which
Yeah.
is cool. Yeah.
That's really cool, man. I think that story, speaks volumes, because it's like you know you, and like
Yeah.
what you truly wanted to do, like, in that moment, and what
Put it aside and go, you
yeah.
know what? It's where I'm at. It's okay.
Yeah.
Nobody cares when you do get on a podium or not. They don't care for very long, but I was like,
Right.
that is one where I'm like, I will tell that story over saying I finished third.
Right. Right.
Like
Yeah.
a lot more. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
I think, like, when you kind of have that mindfulness too, I think it's still, at least, I don't know, this is my thinking, like, it's still okay to have that competitive side. Like, for
Yes.
example, that marathon I ran, my goal was 250. I got 248 because my dream is to go to Boston. That should get me there. And but during that whole time, and I knew I had to train a lot and, go a little bit crazy, but during that whole time, it made me, like, I knew that's what I wanted, but I knew I had, which is like my competitive side, and I was still going to show up and do those things. But I knew at the end of the day, I had like my new kind of core values. I think you said it perfectly. I felt like I was improving. I was still doing that, but I wasn't proving, because
Yeah.
I knew what I wanted, and I didn't really care what anybody would think about what I was doing, if I failed, if I succeeded. And like, it is just kind of like this, like, oh, like it's all good, and
Yep.
it just gives you this freedom to do what you want. And like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I wish
Yep.
I could paint this a little bit better, but I just like that, getting that spot where you're just improving, you're just doing you, and like, you're not proving. Yeah, for sure. Because I think when I started, to be transparent, I was 100% proving. I was proving things
Me
to
too.
other people, comparing to other people, for sure. Worried about what they thought about what I was doing and what they were doing, and like proving things to myself, which maybe at the time I did need a little kick in the ass, and this was a good
Yeah.
way to challenge myself. But yeah, I think that that's okay. But then you get to the point where it's like, okay, what's success for you, and like,
Mhm.
what are your do you value? So I didn't know we were going to get down this rabbit hole, but I love it. These are the conversations I love to have. Yeah.
I was like, it's a fast track through like all those running experiences, and you can say the same for backcountry hunting.
Yeah.
And you hope that for somebody who does go on one of those hunts and have that experience, hunting's just a little slower to recognize these sort of things. I feel if you go on one trip a year, it's going to take you a while to be like, you know what? It's okay not tagging out. It's okay eating the tag. And you'll remember those moments when you do eat those tags. And then when you do harvest something, it's that much more meaningful. I was like, I'll always say it too. I was like, like when you shoot something, it's pretty fleeting. You shoot the big one, it's pretty fleeting. Like it's here and then it's like, well, I guess next year I gotta try
Right.
to put a bigger one. I'm like, well, good luck with that.
Yeah, you're moving on to the next thing anyway. So it's
Yeah.
like I've learned that, yeah, in both, and I want to get into maybe some more of the similarities between the backcountry hunting and the running, but
Yeah.
I've learned that in both. Yeah, I think the running kind of hit me first, but it's like, well, it did, because that first ever race I ran was a marathon, and you think like, this is my big goal. Once I do this thing, I'm gonna have it all figured out. Like it's gonna be
Exactly.
this big unlock, and then you cross the finish line and it's cool. Like, I mean, I was, you're proud of yourself, but then like, you get home or whatever, and then it's like, oh, like now what? Like,
Yep.
so it's taught me to be like, well, again, you ask yourself, what do you want? What defines success for you? Is this something you want to keep doing? Like, um, you kind of set your own path. And then I realized like, oh, well, since these like trophies, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
are short lived, I'm just going to focus about more on being present and
Yeah.
things like that through the whole journey. And it's just been, I'm a lot more of a happy person now. Like
Yeah.
it just,
Totally.
yeah, I think that's when, you kind of, not that I have it all figured out, but I think that's like an important little step. Yeah.
No, my wife was like, yeah, oh, a while back, she was like, you just a pain to be around when you're training. I'm like, well, shoot, like, what's wrong with that? Like, I'm like, what's wrong with that? I'm a pain to be around. Well, it's because I'm half starved and overtrained and like all these things. And I'm like, I know I'm going to do this. It's a good thing that I'm doing these races. I'm setting an example for my boys and da 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 da. And turns out I'm like, I'm actually kind of a bear to be around when I'm training for one of these races, even though like, no, I'm doing it for all these good reasons, but it wasn't really taking a step back and going like, look at how it's impacting everything around me, and that's subtle. And my wife, bless her heart, she'll put up with it or try to, make the correction, whatever. And my boys, they don't have any clue, like they're
Right.
just, all right, dad's on a run. And I'm like, well, dad's on a run for a lot more hours than, depending on the distance that you're training for. It's like, well, shoot, I probably should be a little more present. And I'm like,
Yeah.
same goes with hunting. I'm like, I'll always push it past the point of fun there too. But I was like, that took me a while to realize, before we had kids that it's okay, like going and hunting. But then having kids, guess what? My wife's at home bearing all of the burden. And I'm like, I'm hunting because I'm filling the freezer.
Yeah.
So
Right. So you can tell
I'm like,
yourself all the
yeah.
stories.
I was
Yeah.
like, well, actually, come full circle now. And my father-in-law would say this to me too, and I wouldn't take it that seriously. Like, like you need to like pick your times, but then you need to be home too. So
Right.
I'd be like, well, shoot, I can hunt this and that and everything. And no, he's a good reminder. But that's the experience. That's the experience factor that comes into play when you've done it and you've messed it up enough times too. Not that a training regimen isn't like it's a good thing. You're not messing anything up by being on a good training plan. But take a look at where you could like tweak and change a couple things so that you can have the balance. Um, and that's where I go back to having more of a strength supplement in my running. It's like, well, I can have a little bit more strength supplement so that my training runs are more quality and I'm not having to spend as much time on my feet,
Yeah.
which
There
is
you go.
even if you look at like some of the military training. And we worked with Donnie Bigham. He trained Army Rangers. He's an Army Ranger and trained Army Rangers his whole career. And the PT that they would do, it was mind boggling to me because the time on feet that people would have in basic and then the training programs as they go through and go into selection and that sort of stuff. He's like, no, we're taking them off their feet. We're putting them on bikes and like doing all this stuff. And I'm like, that's it. Like, that's the stuff that I realized after overtraining. And, it's like, hey, how do you add these other elements in and then get a better outcome than you even thought? Because, you're just like, everybody would always say, it's just, this much time on your feet and this much elevation and this many miles and need to run 100-mile week here and do this. And actually, that's, everything kind of evolves and changes as people learn more. So I'm like, holy smokes, I'm learning like you guys are on the same path, even though you're trying to save the military millions of dollars, because of people getting stress fractures and whatnot.
Right.
And here we're kind of on that same path as well. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's all funny how it's all tied together, but I will 100% encourage anybody, if they're a backcountry hunter or they aspire to be a backcountry hunter, check out the endurance sports. Check out an ultra marathon. I'm like, go do it. Like, you can walk the dumb thing, honestly. So
Yeah, people do. Yeah, it
Thank
just
you.
depends on what your goals are, and then it's it's really cool, and the community with it is so cool. Everybody just like you have to have a positive attitude to finish
Positive.
an ultra. So
Yep.
everybody there is like everybody's gonna go like maybe you're at the check-in the day before. Everybody there tomorrow, like is gonna be like everybody's gonna be in so much pain and have like all these highs and lows. But still, the day before, everybody's like, "Oh, I just can't wait! Like so excited! This is gonna be so awesome! Like where are you from? Like yeah,
Yes.
because you just have to be positive." And I did want to even talk more about like because I found just so many and we've talked about them already a little
Mhm.
bit, like the connections between the backcountry hunting and the endurance running. And I think there's a lot of mindfulness, like I've learned in both, and like just the simple fact of like when I'm in a big race and like I can almost picture it. Say if you're doing like a 50 miler, you get to mile 25 and you're just like on this low and you think like there's just no way. You're
Mhm.
on day 3 of a 10-day elk hunt and like you're just in this low and there's just no way. So just these similarities of what you can tell yourself.
Yeah.
So I guess, do you have any, because maybe I've heard a few and I might have like one or two. Do you have any like mental mantras you might tell yourself like at those points? um
Oh, I'm like, that goes back to my buddy. I talked about him at the beginning, like a very accomplished ultra runner, but um, he's just like one foot in front of the other. And I was like, if there's a mantra, like, it's that, because you can always do that. You can always muster the amount of energy required to keep moving. And that's a really important thing in backcountry hunting. That's a really important thing in life as well. When you're like, I don't want to go any further, you know that you can, yeah, go just a little bit further. Like, you can get one foot in front of the other. And I've seen that time and time again, mostly in observations. I've had some like pretty low points where I'm just like, I'm just creeping, but I've seen it in observation where they fall apart entirely and then they put the wheels back on and they go. And that's something from a backcountry hunting perspective, like, you'll run into that when you don't see any game, when the weather's really crappy and you've like wanted it to be perfect the entire time, or you make a bad shot. Like, that's one of those where, it's like, well, it's my job to track this animal now. And yes, I could give up right here. However, it is my job to track this sucker down. And as a human, I was like, we have that advantage over animals in the backcountry, is that we can keep moving without having to sit down and take a nap. While we can sit down and take a nap, humans have this unique ability to be able to continue going. Whereas somebody who expels all of its lung capacity, such as an elk or a deer, they got to go bed down, and that's how they recover. And so I was like, we can actually go and find that animal when we didn't think we could. So I'm like, that's a big one for me. It's like the more confidence that I've had over the years from being able to do those races or those big endurance pushes. I'm like, well, it's really like no reason for me to have to stop, honestly. Maybe breaking a bone or something like that. But I mean, for the most part, you gain that confidence. But that correlates in life too. When you're like, I just want to be done. Well, give it a little more effort. Give it a little more effort, and maybe dive into it a little bit further and see what you need to do, whether it's work or family or whatever it may be. Like, you can always go just like a little bit further. And I'm not saying, some of that stuff gets cliche, I would say.
right,
You
but
like, sometimes going a little bit further is saying taking a step back and going, that's not the most important thing to me. So maybe I need to
Right.
adjust my path a little bit.
Yeah. Very cool. I like it. I found myself like telling myself the things in these big races to like, yeah, I think it can be applied to all aspects of life, not just then on a hunt. Like I like to throw out the example of like this house I'm in right now. I bought this like at the end of the year before last, and I spent like months like remodeling it, fixing it up, and like I thought I knew a thing or two, like work with my hands, but like quickly I bit off more than I can chew. But like each night, like I'm working late, and it's like I got this huge elephant, and I just need to keep taking one bite
Yeah.
at a time, and you just think like, oh man, like well, what would it cost to like get a contractor in here or something? But like I knew that's not what I wanted. There were so many things I had to learn, and like
Yeah.
you just keep. I was like, this is just like running an ultra. It's just like
It's
running
its
all.
own
Like you just
endurance feat.
keep breaking it down. Yeah, and
Yep.
that's you just took it like it's like one step at a time. It was one day at a time. Like
Yeah.
today, I'm just gonna put this toilet in. Like that's it. Like don't worry
That's it.
about anything else. Yeah, but it's true. Like it's given me so much more patience. Like
Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can do that. And I was like, yeah, I love looking at things like it, like the normal day-to-day tasks or those sort of projects as an endurance feat in and of themselves, you know. S- Stay keep up on your nutrition and your hydration, and yeah, you might go lacking on some sleep for a little bit, but you'll put it back in the bank when you know you get this done. And those are big things. I've never built a house, but I and I've only done like minimal remodeling. So I totally understand that though. It's like I want to get this done. The reality of it is it's not all going to get done today. So I'm going to do that one thing.
Right.
And then I'll do the caulking around the toilet tomorrow.
Literally it can be like if that's just your win for the day, like
Good.
sometimes you need those days. It's just the
Yeah.
most minute, breaking it down, small
Yep.
bites. Yeah.
Yep.
I love it.
Yeah.
Then I wanted to do just a little bit more technical kind
Yeah.
of between like the whole because I really do look at these like so similar, like the endurance racing and like the long hunts, like with the nutrition,
Mhm.
hydration, and things like that. So if we just want to like before you wrap up here, just talk a little bit about like that kind of stuff because I've found that like learning more about nutrition helping me in one world has helped about the other one.
Yeah.
So if we want to give it like I mean, I think people have a general understanding of like calories, but as far as like um carbs, fats, proteins, like what seems to help the most for a larger endurance event and
Sure.
here and there we can tie it back into like a long hunt. But
It's it
go
boils
ahead.
down, and it's funny because after like a race season I end up with so many of this type of goo packet and this type of bar and stuff, and so I just throw them in my hunting backpack, and I'm like, well, I'm good. I just
There you go.
same thing, but it's inputs and outputs, and I'm not a nutritionist or anything like that, but understanding that you need to fuel your body so that you can keep moving. For me, I have a like my rule of thumb is kind of a layering system, and I'll say this because I was like, well, my oldest boy, he shot a bull um, this last November, and I usually when I'm by myself, I'm like I'm really good about if I kill an animal, then I sit down and I make sure and get some water, some electrolytes, some sugars, some carbs, some protein. Layer it in that way, and then I'll go to cutting because mostly I'm like I don't want to have shaky hands because I do get you get the endorphin dump after you kill something and
Uh-huh.
you get shaky hands, and I'm like I don't want to cut my femoral artery or something like that because I have shaky hands. So I with my son, I totally neglected to sit down and have that moment of like let's power up before we go to cutting, and he had the endorphin dump, and then he's like we were just just bagging stuff up and pulling quarters off, and it was awesome. He's like, Dad, I'm a little shaky, and I'm like, oh shoot, like leave it to me. So did some heavy on the hydration, getting some electrolytes in, and then carbs or sugars, carbs, and protein. And like literally, it's that simple. Fruit snacks, some trail mix, some granola, and then a meat stick. I'm like, and that honestly for a trail race is such a good combo. For me, I've seen it over time, and I've paced a lot of people too. And I was like, if I can keep them on that cadence to where it's not sugar, sugar, sugar all the time, because you'll blow up because you can only run on that sugar for so long. And you do need the fats. And believe me, I'm full keto trail races, and it's a lot harder. I'm like, you're gonna have to really geek out on that to make sure that you get your nutrition right. But I was
You
like,
have done those like
oh yeah,
keto.
yeah.
Dude,
Like
how do you do that? Like,
I'm like, I've geeked out on so much stuff. I'm like, it's laughable how much stuff. Like,
did you
I'm like,
like it? Like,
I did like, and I think once I figured that out, but it was from my brother-in-law on hunting, and he had one hunt one year where he was big, he's overweight. I'm like, man, it was a pain hunting with him. He didn't want to get up in the morning. Da 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 da. Well, he went back after that hunt. I didn't really give him too much grief, but he had a coworker who went on keto and started seeing the benefits, and so my brother-in-law went on keto, and then he came back out the next year to hunt, and he's literally hiking in front of me, and he's on keto, so he had to, he's not having all the snacks that we would normally have, and he had modified everything, but he had so much energy. I'm like, you know what? And I
okay.
didn't need to do it for any other reason than I was just curious. And so I
Yeah.
went on a year journey of keto, and, did a lot of avocados, a lot of sweet potatoes, and a lot of red meat. And it was awesome. I basically made myself lactose intolerant. So I was like, FYI, like I was very, very strict. But then even snacks, I wasn't going into aid station and grabbing a whole bunch of sugary snacks and M&Ms, even though I wanted them so bad.
Yeah.
I was like, nope, sticking to this. And I saw it. Like, it was just, you had to really stay on top of fueling. Like, your carbs and your fruit was really important, to get as much fruit as you needed.
Okay, so you were still getting fruit in
Yeah,
as some carbs.
as a carb. Yeah.
Okay,
I
yeah.
was like, yeah, but no processed stuff.
Right, okay. I think
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I
Yeah.
say keto, I was like, yeah, to run a race, I'm like, you have to have carbs.
Just yeah.
Yeah. Like, you
Because
need them whatever way, shape, or
yeah,
form.
for
So
sure. I've noticed that too. I always feel better when, it's not processed stuff. The carbs I'm
yeah.
getting in are
Yep.
clean. Yeah, for sure.
But
And
it's good. I was like, it's good. Like,
good.
it's such clean eating.
Yeah.
Man,
Mentally I feel better too.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
overall, like, that's like a cleanse, because there is so much junk that's out there.
Mhm.
But that being said, I was like, if you can layer those in and you can make sure and you can stay on top of those, stay on top of your water. Like, I'm like a big fan of Tailwind or some sort of calorie in your drink of choice. Like, get those, because you've got a drink, and so you may as well be getting some extra calories that way. It's dextrose. I was like, I'm like, you can go on about just, you're gonna burn it, you're gonna use it, it's gonna go. So
Yeah, you get to
yeah,
the point where it's just, you're gonna burn it. I like that tailwind. I'm looking forward to picking some up. I wasn't grabbing it for like my marathon training, but
yeah,
when I'm doing this big block coming up for my 100 miler, that tailwind, because I found that like usually for me to learn something, I have to like get hit in the face, and then I'm like, okay, now it makes sense. I'm gonna now change my behavior. So
yeah,
I've run like an ultra before where I've run into that where I just had problems just eating, and I love food. Like
yeah,
I'm like, why am I looking at like this food at this aid station and not like I know I need to eat, and I just can't, like you just can't, because then I'm like, okay, it's you find later that like, okay, so like a lot of the blood and your body's energy is going to your legs, so a lot isn't going to your gut. So it's like finding things that are easily digestible. That's why
yes,
these gels are so popular. And then so this tailwind is a very carbohydrate, sugary drink, which is just primo for
mhm,
big endurance events, because it's a liquid and
yep.
you're getting a ton of calories. And it's funny looking at the back, like the nutrition label, because it's like, oh, you could never drink this like
Oh,
just day to day, but
it's
it is
literally like a
exactly what
little
you need
Debbie.
out there.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
uh,
So I'll be definitely looking at that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention too, and I think this is huge on a hunt. I've
Mm-hmm.
implemented it just more day after day, especially with salt.
Yeah.
So I found, and like kind of when I talk to people a little bit, like I'm a NASM certified trainer, but I'm not a certified nutritionalist. So I try to
Right.
make that clear. But I found some things that work for me. I use, what I've learned in that course and reading books, and I'll just give my 2 cents. Use it if useful. So, but what I like to tell people is like, so if we're starting to, eat clean, a lot of whole foods,
Mm-hmm.
and we're also very active, even running, like think you're not getting a lot of salt like in your
No.
day to day, cutting out the processed foods, and then if you're running a lot, even out in the sun and everything, you're gonna really need to be conscious and mindful of salt. So, do you want to touch on that a little bit, like the importance of electrolytes, salt, not just in a race, but even on a hunt too? I try to make sure I'm a little bit
It's a
mindful of
big
it too.
deal. I'm like, I will take the tailwind right on my hunts, drop it in the water too. I was like, I give it to my kids when we're out, like we're on a backpacking trip or on an adventure. I was like, they get it as well, because I was like, it keeps them going, and especially like younger
Oh,
kids. I'm
totally.
like, they just run out, and I'm like, oh, they kind of like the taste and whatever. They'll joke with me. Sometimes they don't like some of the flavors, but that being said, I get like a big old sweat ring. Not on this hat because this one's like polyester or whatever. But I was like, I big old sweat ring. I was like, I sweat like crazy, and those sweat rings are the indicator of all the salt that's leaving your body. So
I got it right here. I wore this when I was bear hunting in
yeah,
Idaho, and
it's kind of cool. I
yeah,
was like, then you wash them and then they get all bleached out and whatnot.
yeah,
I joke you could run water through mine and then you could get your electrolytes back.
yeah.
But you're expelling so much and your body does need those, like those metabolic pathways, and needing salt in particular, to be able to, for your heart to function the way
Yeah,
it's supposed to.
yeah, because I think, and don't
Yep.
quote me, but just the way for your muscles to contract, um, you're using a lot of salt and electrolytes to do
Yeah.
that. So constant hiking and running and pounding, like all these muscles are flexing and all these things, and that's what. So it's using a lot of that, and backfilling is huge because they
Yep.
say, so the word in the ultra world is bonk. Like
Yeah.
runners will bonk because they just run out of fuel, whether it's calories or salt or whatever, and that just seems to be like the big ones. And
Yep.
I feel like you could definitely bonk on a hunt, like on a long hunt,
And
if
so
you're
many people do, and they
yeah.
don't know. One of my buddies, he'll, um, he had cancer when he was in high school in his femur, and so his like physiology, like the way they've had to graft everything, and he gets muscle cramps really bad when we're hunting because we like hunt and we climb ridges and descend and climb and descend and get back to camp, and he got these muscle cramps one night, and I'm like, instantly for me, I'm like, well, what do you do with muscle cramps? I was like, you take a salt pill. And so I'm like, to this day, he carries salt pills with him because he never knew that like that's something that you could take. I was like, shoot, I got these. I know what we do for muscle cramps, And he wakes up in the middle of the night in our hunting camp. It's like, oh man, I'm cramping up. I'm like, yeah, take these, because that happens in a race
Yep.
too. I was like, kind of prior to bonking, you end up cramping up, and salt, even like subconsciously, your body saying, I'm taking salt in, oftentimes will alleviate the cramps themselves. I was like, people will go on, you get on ultra running podcasts and you can geek out on this all day long. But I was like, because your body just is like, I need that. So I'm not going to release these muscles until I get that. And it's pretty wild. So those are completely applicable, I'd say, ultra endurance world to hunting world. I was like, just have those. You can overdo it. You can overhydrate. I was like, you see plenty of people show up for races where they've consumed too much water ahead of time, and it's kind of the same result as bonking. Like you overhydrate, or you over supplement, and so it's understanding how you fuel best. And even if you're going on a backcountry hunt and you have all those meals and stuff, I was like, I'll do this for my ultras, is I will put my nutrition in place and have it. And a couple weeks prior, I'll go through a day of consuming what I would consume in that race. And I was like, for a backcountry hunter, get some extra meals, if you're like, and just have them at home. Heck, serve them up for dinner and share with your family what you're going to have on that trip, and make sure that your gut's good, that you're used to them, because you'll get out there and like your snack system might not work and you might bonk, or you might have one of those meals and it might just devastate you. And you're like, well, dang it, that just takes away from the hunt. So
Yeah.
you got to test it out on yourself. Arguably when you're exerting that amount of effort, you just need those calories, but that's a good thing. It's an easy thing for people to do. It's kind of fun. Like if you're not going on a backpacking trip prior to your backcountry hunt, just serve them for dinner one night. See what your wife says.
Yeah. Just be like, you don't love this? This is what
Here's
I
a
eat on.
dehydrated
Yeah.
meal. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry, honey. I'm cooking tonight. Yeah.
Got it.
No, that's funny. That is such a good tip, because that's a controllable. Like
Yep.
that is an easy controllable you can do right at home, like before you go.
Absolutely.
So I
Yep.
love that. Okay. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Weston, yeah, thanks for coming on. Real quick, do you want to just touch a little bit more on Mountain Tough? Like where can people find it?
Yeah.
Another we talked about it in the beginning a little bit, but there is so much on there as far as like obviously the strength training, the preseason prep, and like the in-season stuff, and yoga, mobility, all that. So if you want to plug that and where people can find that and everything.
Yeah, just MTNTOUGH, MountainTough.com. You can check out all things Mountain Tough. We always have a 14-day free trial, so you can pop in there. We do have great nutrition section with nutrition courses in there, both backcountry hunter and just general nutrition focused. And that's done by our nutritionist, Kyle Camp, and he's absolutely fantastic. He's one. He'd come. You want to geek out on nutrition? You should have Kyle. He'd totally come on and talk to
I
your
will.
audience
Kyle
about
Camp, you said?
Kyle Camp. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
introduce you. I'll connect you guys via email. But
Perfect.
that being, like, he breaks it down. Like I feel like in my like geeking out on everything and overanalyzing everything, and then coming to the conclusion that it's actually quite simple. It's pretty fun to listen to him, and he's like, it's pretty simple, you guys. Just like do this. It's just that you don't want to, because all the other things are so tempting. So,
Right.
But yeah, like it's Mountain Tough overall is like fitness programs for everybody. I was like, from very, very beginner, we go with the on-ramp program into foundation, and then you can cycle into a backcountry hunter series. If you're coming out west for a backcountry hunt, I was like, we'll give you your money back if it doesn't work for you. I like 100%. We stand by that. So, but it will be beneficial to you if you're coming out west. And if you happen to be training for an ultra, 2 or 3 Mountain Tough workouts a week will make you very, very durable. I will assure you of that, because that's for me. That's where, that's where it helped me in my running. I was like, God, 2 or 3 days of work, 2 to 3 days of this type of work really pays off in the long run.
Yeah, I think what I'm actually gonna do, and that's great, 2-3 days a week. Like I said, so I got this, and I think I'm gonna drop this next week. So I got this 100-mile race August 9th. This next month, I'm gonna be running so much. I told myself like I still want to get my strength training in, but it can't be 6 days a week, because I'm just running too much. But I'd like to find something good that's a couple days a week. Not, again, this is great just to prepare for the hunt. So I'm just going to leverage Mountain Tough for both things here. But what I'm going to do, I'm doing like a YouTube series, like week by week of training for this 100. And I think I'm going to like implement some of these Mountain Tough workouts in there. Cause I did one the other day, just like the preseason prep. And immediately I was like, I think this is exactly what I'm looking for, because it's a little bit faster pace than what I'm used to. And I just feel better when I'm breaking a little bit of sweat, but I'm also, focusing on strength. So I liked it. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. I was like, I'm a big fan. I'm like, and you can pick 2 to 3 workouts. Do not overanalyze which ones you should do, but I'm like, they will fit the bill, and they'll give you just that edge and the durability that you do need And doing those kind of higher intensity ones, when you go into an aid station, this is one of the biggest benefits. When you go into an aid station and you fill up with waters and you're doing all your stuff and you go into it and you're pretty gassed, when you do those more high intensity type workouts, those shorter workouts, you will walk out of that aid station and start running again because your body recovers so fast in that instance. And zone 2 is awesome. Like you have to do zone 2. Like you need to do that for that endurance. But when you add in a little bit of that high intensity, the combo is unreal. And I was like, you will run out of aid stations. And a lot of people, when they're feeling pretty beat down, they'll walk out of aid stations. But I'm like, on Mountain Tough, you won't. Trust me. You'll
I'm holding you to that because I've walked out of my fair share.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, my legs feel fresh. Like, that's Mountain Tough. I know.
That's it, man.
I can tell you what aid station where I was when I first realized that, and I'm like, no way. And it goes away after a little while, but you at least run out of the aid station. So
yeah, love it, dude. Deadly. And then if people want to like follow you and see, I don't know, the other things you got going on, do you have any like races on the docket or
I'm doing
hunts this fall too?
I was like, I kind of, I don't know, we're in the social media world, and so I kind of go back and forth with. I have my social media profile. I don't do a whole lot on there, but I am doing the Rut 11K with my 10-year-old. We're doing the Rut 11K, and so yeah, training. We're training for the Rut 11K, and actually, I'm worried because he's got some wheels on him, and he's got kick, and that sucker can run uphill. I'm like, man. So I hope he doesn't leave me in the dust in the Rut 11K.
No, I love it.
But that's it. I was like, I'll be pacing a buddy in his 100-miler in August, and
which one's that?
The Wyoming Range 100.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
cool.
Yeah, it's not a popular one because it's really burly. But yeah, he's doing it, and I'll see how long he says he wants me to pace him. So I'm like, I'm geared up for 40 to 60, something.
Yeah,
like
you kind of just got to go there and be like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm on.
What are we doing, man?
Yeah.
We'll see when we get there, but yeah, that's all I got. So good luck to you and your training for August, and yeah, I love that you're incorporating Mountain Tough, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for coming on. I really enjoyed the chat, and yeah, people go check out Mountain Tough and everything like that. I think it's a great thing. So, all right, man, I'll let you go. Yeah, really appreciate you hopping on.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, man. Thanks. See you guys. Hey, if you liked that episode, please share it with a friend, share it on your story, and give the podcast a rating and a review on wherever you listen. For more of this type of content, you can head over to the YouTube channel and follow along on all the social platforms. Really appreciate it. See you on the mountain.